I'm David Lee, and you're watching PaxSafe Live.
We want to help you take your MSP business to the next level.
We have just expanded the amount of resources that you as partners have through PaxSafe.
Real security is about how you manage the losses, how you take the punches, how well you detect, how well you respond.
This is where we'll be bringing you content that you want to see every week to help you grow your business.
And I think the real winners here are the managed service providers.
Who is this?
I'm Chief Cuteness Officer.
My advice is know what you're selling and know whether it's making you money.
I ended up living in Korea for 4 years.
I was wondering when we were going to talk about the elephant in the room.
But thanks, Dad.
Let's talk about risk assessment. So there's all kinds of ways to respond to risk.
Man, it's great to see you, Dom.
If you're really interested in just the nerdy bits of home security, definitely check out those resources. That was a huge thunder.
Happy Friday, and welcome to the game on PaxSafe Live, the show where we talk about all the cybersecurity shenanigans you need to be aware of. This week, we are kicking off Cybersecurity Awareness Month with a really neat series of shows dedicated to Cybersecurity Awareness Month, hopefully with a lot of broad information. Also, if you're a PaxSater, make sure you stick around, and if you're playing the Capture the Flag contest, you'll really want to be paying attention to this episode. Later on, we're going to bring on Rob Anke and Chance Davis from PaxSafe's very own internal cybersecurity team to talk more about how we protect PaxSafe, but also some of the things we're doing that you can apply to your MSP and your customers. With that, let's jump straight into the news.
You know, Dom,
What's up, Matt?
there's some coolness here, right? Because this is the first cybersecurity month where I feel like we're really starting to see a lot of cybersecurity engineers be part of this, and here's why. There's a super high level of snark in the comments about Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Like the memes I've seen this week, like, oh, this is the one month I have to care about cyber. And even in your own right, Dom, right? There's a certain amount of just bitterness
so
of Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Yeah, a little grinchy. We talked about it. But that said, it is the one month where we actually get to really talk about it, really focus on it, and in some ways highlight the unseen people that are out there protecting our worlds. And think about the game and what we're doing in these next few episodes is we get to bring on the real heroes, the ones that we hope nobody knows their name, the ones that we hope people don't see on a given basis, but also the ones that you and I, Dom, often interact with, right? Matt, are you doing this on your computer? Yes, I am this time, Chance. Thank you. Sorry. And so it's fantastic to get to spend some time this month with all of our security teams. So I'm really excited about this set of episodes and really excited because this is the first time at PAX 8 where we've had a really big cybersecurity month, like where we're doing CTFs and we're actually really focusing on it. And that's all led by some of the vision of Robert and Chance and some of their team. And like, I don't know, man, it just gives me all the feels. So I suppose we'll get right into the news. But if you're paying attention and you're on for this call, it's going to be a great conversation with some real security practitioners that kind of live this world and what they wish they could say to you through the other 11 months of the year. So let's get started. We start with some not so great news. We actually talk about the outcome of some prospect medical hospitals in dire state after a post-attack. In August, a cybersecurity attack on a national hospital chain makes medical care in underserved areas in Connecticut even harder to obtain. And the reason is that they said hackers from Residia, ransomware as a service group, claimed responsibility for an attack on Prospect Medical that forced the hospital's chain's IT systems to go offline for several weeks. Following an August 1 discovery of intrusion, see California hospital chain facing ransom. Prospect Medical reported Friday to regulators that the cyber attack compromised the protected, or PHI, protected health and personal information of more than 190,000 individuals, which doesn't even pale in comparison to the one in Michigan last week. Swept up in the attack were there 3 Connecticut hospitals, which were under an acquisition agreement, which now we're actually talking about a buyer buying somebody that just had a attack on their system. Yale New Haven Health said it's having serious second thoughts about buying the deal. It struck in October 2022 to buy these 3 hospitals. So now we're at this point where you're past due diligence, you're past all these aspects, you're past letter of intent, you're about to write the check, you're buying them. They're going, I don't know. I don't think so. I don't know if we need to complete this deal. They basically said, we have mounting concerns about the viability of our transaction with Prospect Medical Holdings to acquire substantially all the assets of Waterbury, ECHN hospitals. Yale New Haven Health said in a statement provided to Security Media Group, our concerns include deteriorating condition of the Waterbury and ECHN hospitals, so we're talking physical, particularly in light of the cyber attack last month and the State Office of Health strategy process to review the certificate of need application that we filed last month. So, Dom, what I want to tackle in this speak is that this actually caused, for the first time I'm really quite aware of, an almost immediate reversal of an acquisition agreement that's been running for almost a year, right? This was signed in October 2022, so they've been working on this for a year. What are your thoughts on this, and do you think we start seeing more companies impacted by post-breach events and what they're worth from that?
Well, this one sucks because it's a hospital, and they're hospitals and the article states, underserved areas. In healthcare terms, and even areas where people are reliant on an emergency room due to financial hardship and other factors, if these hospitals don't make it, there's real challenges of real life, right? Like people's health and frankly survival. From an acquisition perspective, if I think I put my business hat on, and I'm mid deal, right? Like you said, we're doing the due diligence. Due diligence is done. We're probably getting ready to go to the closing table. Hell yes, I'm going to back out if there's this level of incident.
Or at least change the price.
Right? Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think this will be a common thing. And I think this has probably happened at least on smaller scales and less sensitive industries before. And it's just not as public, right? So it sucks, but I do honestly, again, if I was a buyer, I would probably make a similar decision or at least extend the deal so that I can figure out what I'm going to do with it.
Yeah. And if you think back, like even in my event, right, when we had our massive ransomware incident, we bought a company. We knew for a fact 3 years ago, or I guess 4 years ago now, I'm getting old, but we knew for a fact they had a massive cyber event. We already knew it. We were okay with it. We were buying them anyway. You fast forward 3 or 4 years and you're starting to see this become a weapon. And you're starting to see this saying, hey, if there's challenges in their internal IT department, their technology and security and all those things, are there other things I'm not aware of? Right? Are there other things that they brand poorly? And you're starting to see, I think, in my opinion, people tying cyber failures, cyber challenges with operational failures and operational challenges. You're starting to see people go, man, these are correlatable. How you deal with your own continuity of operations plan in an incident is also how you deal with a lot of other things operationally. And I think maybe that's part of what we're seeing is a lack of buyer confidence out of this, if nothing else, but just a great capitalistic strategic move to say, you just had a massive incident. We're really unsure about closing this, right? And what that means.
Right.
So I think we're going to see more of this.
I just want to stress too, like this is one of the reasons I really wanted to talk about this article. The acquisition deal aside, you're talking about healthcare organizations bleeding huge amounts of money into IT incidents, and the ramifications that are real. We kind of ponder about the impact on real human life a lot, and again, these hospitals shutting down with where they're located would be probably
now
devastating.
A 4-hour drive somewhere instead of 30 minutes, right? Or 10 minutes,
right?
Yep. And if you think about that, that means that you don't have adequate care in the right places in an underserved populace that people aren't necessarily going to profit from either. And so you have this real challenge there. So yeah, it's a great call out.
Right.
And it definitely is one of the things where we're starting to see a direct impact to human life and to human operations from these cyber events. Mainly in healthcare is the easiest path to cross that over, right? We saw it in the Birmingham incident with the baby that passed away as a result of them going to paper operations. But okay, so we beat this to death. I think the next one we want to get into is really kind of arguing for something to be aware of, right? This is a news piece. So let's kick over to the next article. LastPass employees and customers targeted in pervasive phishing campaign. One of the things that happens is that once an event happens, we know about it, threat actors use it against us. On September 13th, LastPass customers began reporting phishing attempts. A variety of industries, including LastPass' own 87 employees, were targeted in what the employee called a widespread, pervasive, and convincing phishing campaign. They first got something from marketing at sbit.co, th, which is weird because you already had .co.th, so you're a subdomain, associated with a domain that wasn't previously linked with malicious activity. Yeah, because you can buy them. That's how this works. You can make new ones. The email contained a link to a phishing page that were hosted on the subdomain of customer-lastpass.su. So now you're getting into actually having a link that looks maybe reasonable. LastPass partnered with Forta's Fish Labs to mitigate the risk. Unfortunately, the attackers registered a similar domain to credential phishing and began a second wave of attacks on the 19th. I think where you're getting at is, and this kind of all was right around that understanding that passwords were starting to be compromised, right? Dom, you and I talked about this when we talked about this 2 years ago when this happened, or a year and a half ago when this happened, that data was now, even if you changed your password to your vault, it was already still that same on that vault. And the one that they already have, it already was there. They could decrypt that. And so we actually started seeing news, maybe it was a month ago, Dom, of people that had passwords in LastPass start to be being used in the wild, which gave indication we're seeing people start to break these master passes on these databases, right? Back to your point, they had very low entropy. They were easy passwords because they didn't have any requirements on those. And so what you're finding is now you're getting people taking advantage of that news, rehashing the LastPass compromisation yet again, and asking people to sign back in and do stuff, right? And what's smart about that is it just shows you how well connected the criminal element is to the day-to-day going-ons, right? To the understanding of the way people feel and the way people are going to react to something from a psychological perspective. And we're going to have Robert and Chance talk about some of this in our own organization about how phishing is very insidious, right? It is one of the best attack methods. In fact, I do a talk called How I Would Hack You with Tom Lawrence and Jason Slagle, and my shtick is identity attack and compromise through social engineering and SE type methodologies using phishing as one of the primary mechanisms, right, for that lure. So I think, this isn't surprising to me, I guess is what I'm getting at, Dom. I don't know. What are your thoughts on it? This is natural evolution of
business as usual if you're a threat actor. I mean, COVID started, right, a couple of years ago.
We
saw all kinds of
that.
COVID healthcare scams. Such and such bank reports some problem. Now that it's just normal, and you have to be aware of that. And I think if you're sort of quote the average person, you need to have it in mind that if you're involved in some sort of compromise, doesn't matter, it could be LastPass, could be anyone, that you are likely, if your data is wrapped up in that, to be phished in some regard, right? I was wrapped up in a move-in incident related to the state of Colorado. I'm getting state of Colorado looking phishing stuff, right? And it's just normal. And when I think about it, I see it and I immediately know, but not everyone does. So just understand that that's how you're going to be targeted. And just to reiterate what we said when we thought, now that we think vaults are getting cracked, whatever password manager you use, your master password needs to be impeccable and random. And the whole point is it's the one thing you got to remember, right? So make it real hard to remember and make yourself remember it, because that would go a long way.
Well, and maybe I'm oversharing some of the ways you've tackled this, Dom, but some of the neat ways you can do this is have a very long and hard to remember piece that's stored on something that can reiterate that, let's say like a YubiKey or something, and some portion of that passphrase that you know. What's interesting is now you get back to this something you know and something you have aspect even prior to the authentication happening. And the last pass I'll leave on LastPass. The last piece I'll leave on LastPass, I suppose. Phonetic accidental there. But is that the passwords in that vault are what are at risk right now. Because the master pass gets you to the vault. What's in the vault is what matters. So if you've already moved away from LastPass or you're on LastPass and you've rotated that master password, you still need to go find the most sensitive applications that are in that list and go change the stupid password. Because otherwise they're going to be compromised at some point and they will be used against you. So just understand that that's kind of the dual nature of this one. Let's bring us to our last one. And this one's an interesting article. And it says, Russian's zero-day acquisition firm offers $20 million for Android and iOS exploits. Right? If you're not familiar, what is an exploit? An exploit is just something that's vulnerable inside of a piece of code or application or system that I now can use an exploit against that to gain some position, whether that be remote code execution, whether that be data and access or reading subdirectories
or sell like
things
a product
that are sensitive.
In this case.
Yeah, or a product. Launched in 2021, the firm says it provides technologies for offensive and defensive operations in cyberspace and claims to be working with private and government organizations in Russia, which if that doesn't terrify you, they probably should. This week, the company announced it was boosting the bounties offered for Android and iOS exploits due to high demand on the market. Sorry, I can't. I just can't. High demand on the market, which really means I want to pwn you. These exploits are often used to spy on specific targets or incorporated in spyware versions and vendors to their products, which are then sold to the totalitarian regimes. And we already saw this, right? We saw this with the NSO group and Pegasus. And the only reason NSO Group ever suffered from that was because they decided to spy on the Israeli government as an Israeli company, and that didn't work well for them ultimately. But basically, when we can cut back to this, Dom, when you start thinking about this, these bounties for these bugs aren't being paid to the companies. And I talk about this on stage a lot, right? Like I show the ecosystem of all the different players in the ransomware gang, and there's just so many pieces, but it often starts with one. It starts with that one vulnerability researcher, that one guy or gal that pokes away and finds a vulnerability. And you know what they don't have the ability to do? They don't have the ability to sell it to the company that gives a crap about it. So what do? They sell it to the threat actor. And I think the advocation I'd make, and I'd make the same one to PAX8, why do you not have a bug bounty program? You should be able to buy these bugs back from these threat actors in a way that's meaningful to the system and the ecosystem and doesn't force a lot of these people's hands into the criminal element. And if I was offered $20 million for an Android bug and Android said they don't care about paying me, who am I going to sell it to? If I'm in some level of a country where that is not necessarily as morally reprehensible from that perspective. And so I think, you get into this point where this one doesn't surprise me, but it should scare you a little to understand that as companies and as software vendors don't build things secure by design and secure by default, have plans to solve CIS controls, because guess what? In Control 16, there are things about bug bounties. There are things about how you receive a vulnerability. There are controls and safeguards, and most companies just aren't there. And that's a capitalism problem, not a PAX8 or other company problem. That's a capitalism problem. So I think this is one of those that really highlights how inequitous the world is right now towards a criminal element compared to people that want to do the right thing. And if anybody wants to make fun of me in the comments, that's fair. I am a researcher. I do and would love to sell my bugs to people. I don't sell them to bad guys. But finish that up with that statement, I suppose. We should move on.
Not even for $20 million.
Not even for 20, maybe 10. Oh, wait, that's 20 is more than 10, as I understand it. Maybe I'm in the wrong business.
Perhaps.
Let's hear some wise words from Robin Harris, and then we'll come back with our amazing guests and get into Cybersecurity Awareness Month.
Privacy is a big deal. And privacy touches our lives very deeply and in a personal way. I get these emails to this particular email address, and it's basically because a vendor was breached. They got all our email addresses, and now I'm getting fake invoices from PayPal, fake invoices from Amazon. And the only reason I can just look at them and see that, oh, this is part of that breach, is because of the email. But what if it was the email that I use every day? Our data is so important, and we really have to take steps to keep our private data private. We really need to take responsibility for when we go out and we sign up for things and we put all our information in there and then we forget about it. We're not even using the service anymore and our data's still sitting there. We never closed the account and it's still sitting there. Your name, your address, birth date, all this other kind of stuff. So even going back and closing, if it's something you're not using anymore, go close it. Go close it. Send the people an email, say, delete my account, please. There's a lot we can do to protect ourselves. And this even goes with our children and our spouses. I mean, at work, at home, it's a big deal. And when there's a breach, it can really disrupt people's lives. You don't want to be on the end of it, and you don't want to be part of the cause of it.
There you go. All right. And as Robin's brilliant words, you don't want to be at the end of it, and you don't want to be the cause of it. She's so wise, man.
That's a bad attach. Hey, before we get into the guests, there was a comment that came up before we started the show that I wanted to address.
Sure.
About an incident with Clorox. And I actually haven't read much into this incident, but I think you read a little bit into it. We got asked to cover it, so I wanted to make sure we gave Positive Energy 34 hours a day and 7 days a week on this one.
Yeah.
Sorry,
that's a long day.
To.
No, it's fair.
That's a long
3-4-7. Yeah.
That's a security
day.
I think
I read into it a little bit. I got a little bit. This only really dropped from a news perspective in the last couple of days. And they basically said, hey, listen, we've had a major event. It's causing problems in our world. We don't know what our remediation timeline is. And I think to hit the point by Positive Energy is really just, why would they not know that timeline? And I think that's probably a perfect opportunity. I'm going to give a little bit of my conjecture, but to get in some way in on some of our internal security team that lives in this world, right? And so in my mind, it's one of a few things. It's either going to be there's still an investigative set at this point. They haven't filed a K-8. We don't necessarily have the incident discussion. They're within that first few days. And if I had to guess, they're just really talking about it super duper early. And you get into a place where a lot of companies try to not talk about an incident for a while until they know more, try to be, maybe potentially less communicative about it until they have to. And Dom, you and I have even talked about this. We're seeing companies talk about incidents earlier and earlier and earlier in their incident lifecycle, right? Cisco came out and talked about it within which is 4
great,
days
by the way.
Yeah, it's fantastic. If you're at home and you're watching this, that actually has been an endemic challenge with a lot of players, is that there's almost been the stigma of talking about an incident. And so as a result, nobody wants to talk about it. Microsoft broke that mold last year. Well, gosh, now I'm getting old. 2 years ago, when they actually came out of the SolarWinds event and said, hey, we had a major compromise of our network and our source code was touched. That was the Microsoft doctrine. It was the first time we talked about companies wanting to talk about their challenges early on, even before they know what's going on. And if I had to put a guess in, Clorox is not aware yet of what their remediation looks like because they're still investigating what the containment options look like, how broad it is, how much it's been touched, and how much spread it has before they could ever speak towards bringing it back online. So
you've got to disinfect first, Matt. It's important.
They got to pour some Clorox in it first. They're like, man, the servers haven't cleaned up from the Clorox. It's still there. It's causing problems. Yeah.
No, I agree. Hilarious. You don't know what you don't know. And if you can start that conversation early, I think, and so long as you continue that conversation, by the way,
that's true.
I think it shows a lot that you're coming out and saying, hey, we have a problem. We're trying to figure out what this problem is. And we're going to keep moving forward.
Yeah. Well, let's get some other opinions. We actually have the blessed opportunity. We've seen some chats in the comments of people saying, I want to shout out to my unsung heroes too. And so let's bring on a couple of those rock stars that live in our world. I'd like to bring in Robert and Chance, and let's have them join our conversation, please. Awesome. Welcome, boys. Welcome to the limelight.
Hey, how's it going? Here we go.
That's awesome. So let's pose that first question from our audience, and we'll start with Chance. What are your thoughts on why Clorox hasn't announced a time for remediation at this point in time, 1 day after announcement or 2 days after announcement?
Well, so it's hard. You have to find, the root cause, like you were saying. They probably don't know yet.
And if you don't know what the root cause is, you probably don't want to talk about it more, because if you haven't, patched it or anything, more people are going to want to get in.
Yeah,
and
true
so,
story.
yeah.
In fact, we've seen that play out, Chance. That's a great call out, because we have seen that play out in former actor activity, right? And people are saying, hey, they weren't popped by one, they were actually popped by three different actors. Right. And we've seen that play out in several incidents. Great call out. Rob, what do you think, brother? We're just having some conjecture amongst friends here.
For sure. Ultimately, there's going to be a whole, there's going to either be like a couple people working on one aspect of it and a couple people working on another. So if there's not like a linear, we can't find anything. We're digging through logs. We're looking at, we're analyzing, through the SIN. There's not an answer yet. Everything looks fine, but we know that there's something happened.
Sure.
I'm not going to share that, hey, we haven't found anything yet. We're still working on it.
Right. You're not just going to share no news. Although the joke, ironically, I think when you're dealing with a major incident as a company, the cadence is more important than what you have to say, as long as you don't overstate or wrongly state. And I think there is perfect value in saying we still don't know. I think, to your point, coming out and having a regular cadence says, guess what? We're in a major ransomware incident. Don't keep bothering me. I won't have an answer for you. But if you'll go to this communication page, we're going to have an update every X. And that update may still be investigating root cause analysis, to your point. And so, we have that at PAX 8, right? We have a status page when systems are down that speak towards, on some cadence, what we're doing and what we know and what we don't know, at least. And I think the other piece to wrap up that's a corollary, I was part of my I'm on the emergency response team with CompTIA, and we were writing some of our guidelines for the things we want people to talk about. And one of the biggest guidelines we give people is, A, don't put anything in writing, and B, don't put anything in writing if you don't know what the hell you're talking about. The answer is just, I don't know. And that's an acceptable answer. I'm still working on this. So, man, great call-outs from each of you. So, the audience doesn't know you. What I'd love to do is give you each an opportunity to kind of tell me who you are, talk about what you do, your role, and what that role means to cybersecurity in general. So I'll let you boys Rochambeau over who goes first, and then we'll figure it out.
I can go first.
I'll take it.
If you
want to be
there we go.
That was a Canadian standoff. All right, Rob, you win. I heard it first.
Well, I'm a senior cybersecurity analyst with PAX 8, and analyst is the big key there. I am looking at the vuln scans. I'm looking at our current logs. I'm looking at any alerts. I'm constantly documenting just processes so that we can continue ultimately hopefully keeping up our security posture. And I get to work with some really dope people in my team, so I'm happy to send it off to Chance at this point.
Yeah, and I would actually ask, how many times do you get frustrated having to go, hey, Dom, are you actually doing something? Darktrace just popped up, and you're like, no, I was just reading an article for the game. I'm sorry. Does that ever come up into your world?
Zero. I mean, maybe. There's a couple people that's probably watching right now that know. It's like, hey. And then just emoji conversations over the chat.
That's fair.
For sure.
I hope I've never been a part of your emoji conversations, but I'll turn it to Chance on that one.
Real quick, I'll say I actually like it when we get alerts for people like Matt and Dom and stuff, because it's going to be an easier conversation. But anyways, I'm Chance. I'm a cybersecurity engineer. I mostly help architect tools and stand them up, and I'll help with like data collection for Rob, if we need to pull data off an API or whatever, put into Power BI. We do a lot of that. And yeah, that's pretty much me.
So if I understand it, Chance, then, Rob, you're mostly on that analysis, receiving information, trying to parse it, trying to make decisions, trying to decide where we bring in other partners. And Chance, you're building the world, right? You're doing the actual building of that from a cybersecurity engineer. How do we safely connect this? How do we put it together? How do we build this? How do we integrate these things? What's too much data? What data matters? And what should we... So is that a lot of what your world is taking those requirements and conditions of what we're doing and then building stuff as a result of that, Chance? And is that a fair codification of your world?
Yeah, I'd say mostly I'm in the information side. So I help us get more information, through our tools and all that.
Okay. Very cool. Very cool.
And then I look at that and say, "This is too much information. Let's tweak it down. Let's
Tone it down a
make sure
smidge.
that we can ultimately create that workflow moving forward on like, hey, tech services or whatever. Let's help me help you because this is what we're seeing."
Yeah. So one of the things that I like to talk with people about is the difference between, and as we get into this, and I'd love for you to weigh in on this maybe potentially, the difference between attack surface and protect surface. And so for our kind of educative point that I'd love to do is let's just go around the room and maybe see if people can talk about what is the difference between an attack surface and a protect surface. Dom, if you want to start.
So a protect surface is everything in your wheelhouse that you're responsible for.
All that you own.
Front to back, everything. An attack surface is what you've created some sort of avenue that could be exploited, compromised, attacked, what have you, potentially. So you can have a separate protect surface from an attack surface, and that certain things just aren't frankly connected or exposed in such a way, or they're behind a piece of said attack surface. They're protected by said attack surface, and you could spend more of your time focusing on that attack surface.
Yeah, I don't think we need any other definitions. That pretty well lays it out, right? I think the point is the attack surface is what I've chosen to let a threat actor attack. The protect surface is everything in my entire domain that I must protect. And so what I'll turn over to you two is, in your own way, can you tell me how Pax8 tries to manage the attack surface and reduce the attack surface, right? And Rob, you've talked about a few things that's already triggered me, like vulnerability management and exposability and things like that. But is that part of your day-to-day worlds? And if you would, just kind of tell me where it falls into your world and how you help reduce the attack surface of Pax8.
Well, I'll let Rob go on that because because that
I'll go.
Okay.
Yeah. So if what you guys talked about with the protect surface is like everything that you put out there, and ultimately, like from what we see is, if we're gonna think like the actor, it's that's trying to get your information, like what can we easily get, and what's the best value of trying to get information from this user. And typically that's like, full names, that's email addresses, that's phone numbers, birthdays, bank account information, all of the above. And I guess in the Pax8 world, it's like if we need to make sure that if we're going to put this information out there specifically for work, press the button, sensitivity label, and then the things that we're working on, the tools that we have already have those walls that come up, right? Yeah. And that helps us make sure that information doesn't get shared. In like outside of work, that's kind of up to you, right? So if you're going to share stuff like in social media, or if you have,
I don't want to get past this. I don't want to escape this one because I think it's actually that valuable. Right. So you just touched on one piece of reduction of the attack surface, which is by not allowing data that's sensitive to leave our organization. Right. And when you think about that, you're getting into actually saying, hey, I'm going to have 3.7 in CIS, which says establish and maintain a data classification scheme. But I'm also going to then have 3.11 that says encrypt data at rest. I'm going to have things that like 3.13 that say reduce the data loss prevention, introduce a data loss prevention solution. Right. And what's interesting is I think you actually nailed it on the head with one simple phrase. We ask people to say how sensitive is this data, and we ask them to sensitivity label it, which means if I say something's secret or in organization, then the actual attack surface of that data is reduced by the fact that it's encrypted, by the fact that it's done with Azure Rights Management, by the fact that it's now automatically and systemically protected from loss, which means if I steal that data, it's not valuable to me. Which means you took something that was in my protect surface, data that's sensitive, and implemented controls based on that categorization to bring it down to a lower attack surface, that data is now in an encrypted state that can't be removed. And so I really think that's pretty big. And I like to talk to security practitioners because we can kind of just highlight those things that you and I just go, oh yeah, we have sensitivity data. We have sensitivity labels. But what does it really mean? It really means we're reducing our attack surface and we're encrypting data and we're satisfying 3 or 4 safeguards in CIS with raw data. So I just didn't want to let that get completely glossed over on that one.
And it's sometimes it's like a new thing to do, right? It's like I'm popping these Excel sheets, I'm doing Word documents, I'm sending emails out to folks on my lead, and I'm like, hey, I'm coming up to the end of the quarter, I got to get these out, right? And ultimately, it's not like an automatic behavior, and that's something that we got to learn, right? And that's something that we want to, provide some awareness in. It's like, it's that button. If you need to move it on your ribbon just so it's bigger, you click it and then you can go about your day. I feel like that'll definitely help us on our end, like protect you guys for sure. A lot easier.
Yeah. 100%. So,
People
Chance,
love
I'm
it
asking
when
the
I'm on
same
their
question.
email
Oh, go ahead,
thread
Tom.
and I hit a reply and I suddenly mark their whole email thread PaxA confidential. It's their favorite. Doesn't annoy them at all.
I love that you're telling on yourself, Dom. You're right. It's their favorite. Now they can't use this email thread with anybody except for signing into their custom portal. I'll turn the same question on you, Chance. Like, help me understand in your mind how you and your organization, and I think probably on the engineering side, probably almost have more of this in your day-to-day. But how do you help reduce the attack surface when the protect surface is unlimited? How do you help that in PaxA?
So you got to kind of do like a risk analysis. You got to know what's important to protect and what isn't. And so if we have our whole protect service, we have to prioritize what we think is, important. So we've got our endpoints. We use EDR. That reduces that attack surface a lot for endpoints.
Yeah,
and,
for sure.
General stuff like that, like we've got email protection and all that. And so
protecting data and identities, right? Yeah.
Yep. Well, so data and phishing and spam and all that, I think you have to make it as easy as you can on the end user to not be the weak link.
True story, bro. 100%.
100%.
I think that's probably the codification of that point for you, Chance, is really, the Brian Krebs theory, which really is this: make it harder for users to do the wrong thing and easier for them to do the right. And I think that's a great point you're making, is that a security operations team and some of the things you're doing to help keep data private and inside our world are directly one-to-one correlatable to a lot of those statements, right? So it's fantastic. Very good. All right. So I actually have a video we prepared. And for anybody watching the video that's going to give you your CTF key, sorry for playing with your emotions like that, but the next one maybe. But I want to introduce what is Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Where does it come from? So if you guys don't mind, let's go ahead and roll that video for us, and we'll talk about where CSAM started, or Cybersecurity Awareness Month started.
Since 2004, the President of the United States and Congress have declared the month of October to be Cybersecurity Awareness Month, a dedicated month for the public and private sectors and the tribal communities to work together to raise awareness about the importance of cybersecurity. The Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, and the National Cybersecurity Alliance, NCA, are partnering to create resources and messaging for organizations to use when they talk with their employees, customers, and memberships about staying safe online.
So thinking about Cybersecurity Awareness Month and how we're in the middle of this, we started, what I'd love to have you talk about for people is, how can they be aware of protecting their own private information and data? So let's take this away from PaxA and let's just get advice from practitioners. Rob, why don't you start us off? How can people protect themselves online? How can I protect that private data and private information?
I mean, you can literally just stick your computer and bury it in concrete and stick dirt on top of it. And you'll
Good
never
strategy.
Yeah. There's a balance of efficacy there, though, however.
Right. But I mean, it's you just have to be aware of what information you share on the internet, and that includes, like what I said earlier. Sorry, and then you reeled me in with social media, whether setting up all these accounts that goes out there that that you'll have a password associated with, things like that, and I mean. And then when you pop children out, you have to be aware of what they're putting out there as well, and ultimately provide some sort of, being a good cyber aware parent is a big thing in our house, especially since I've children that are now being online. So there's a couple aspects of like recognizing what your digital footprint is, and ultimately practicing any digital hygiene that you can do, not only for yourself but for the people around you. Recognizing, hey, how is my kid a target? Recognizing how my mom is a target or my grandparent is a target, and like, you know, you put cybersecurity on your LinkedIn profile, and now they go to you when they get scammed. So it's practicing what you preach in every aspect of your life. It's a little bit of
I love Henry Tim's answer in the audience. Henry says, thermite, OSINT poisoning, data broker removal, and minimizing metadata. And we're going to tackle a couple of those, right? OSINT, real quick, stands for open source intelligence. So we got a little acronym game going there for OSINT. But thermite, that's just thermite. Yeah, that's aluminum shavings, aluminum oxide, and some serious oxidizers, and it burns through stuff. So I do agree with that. It would destroy your computer. But the second one I want to target, and I want to talk to a little bit, which is OSINT poisoning, or open source intelligence poisoning. I particularly like this one. I'm a big fan of the combination of OSINT poisoning and data broker removals, where I put out bad data, lots of bad data. I think I have like 19 birthdays a year based on the different platforms I'm in. I have 5 different cities I live in. I have many different addresses. I have 20 different email addresses that are all bogus or fake or potentially real. And so you get into this world where scattering bad data out there along with your good data and then reducing the good data is an strategy. So let's talk about that. Chance, one of the things that we offer to all of our employees is a way to help reduce that data from data brokers and data broker removals. So tell me a little bit about that. What do we do here for our employees around helping them remove some of that data that's out there?
So we have a service that company that we partner with, and they do like credit monitoring, and they do, I think, like dark web monitoring and all that. Yep. So they have your information, and you've consented to them having your information. And they will use that information to see what other information might be out there, what might be getting used against you. You know, someone tries to open a credit card in your name, you get an alert, and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And I think that 1-2 strategy of paying for a data broker removal service, there's tons of them out there, right? You have like LifeLock, Aura, you have a bunch of different players out there. But if you're personally at home and not using a service like Aura or not using some kind of data broker removal service, and you ask, why is it valuable? Well, because all of these brokers that buy your data also provide that data out to others. And if I'm a threat actor, I pay for that data because I can attack you with it. So I use it. And so the argument is remove the good data sources that you can and try to poison the bad data sources as much as possible with bad fake data, which won't get removed about you because it's not accurate. So or those services won't remove that about you. And I think what's interesting about it is PAX 8, and maybe you could correct me if I'm wrong on this, Chance or Rob, understand the value of the human that works for them and how many ways they can be coerced. You know, and that's one of the things that people don't think about is, back to your point, Rob, where you said maybe grandma's a target or maybe your junior's a target. It's not a far leap of logic to force someone to do something from a compromised position by targeting someone else they love, right? We've seen these scams where there's child sexual exploitation, things that we've talked about in the past with Lindsay and her team. And those type of things, you know, a lot of times they actually extort the kid and the parents. They're like, listen, we're going to send out this picture to everybody on your Facebook and everybody on grandma's Facebook if you don't actually pay us. But how far of a leap of logic is that for that to jump from extorting based on you to do something to extort you to do something with your company, right? And we've seen that play out before. We've seen extortion work to where someone would compromise a Matt Lee and force me to take advantage of my privileged position to do something inside the organization, Matt Lee. And so that's one of those concerns, I think, that it's really great to see a company like PAX 8 actually paying for these services for all of the employees to realize there's a correlation between real Matt and Matt that works at PAX 8. And those two have overlap in some Venn diagram perspective. So one of the things that we've seen, and I don't know who wants to speak to this, is like you see shifts away from cookie-based data moving into the browsers themselves holding the data and general understanding of like even Power plugins and how those interact with your day-to-day private lives. Can anybody speak towards like how this shift in where our data is and that the main access point is our browser is also turning into more challenges for us?
I'm going to set the stage just a touch more before we dive into this, because a lot of people don't know this. Historically, you visit website A. Website A sets cookie on your browser, right? Cookies are hugely important, by the way. It's how you log in. It's how they track people for load balance. There's a lot of functional uses for cookies. So they're not bad.
It's how you cheat on
Let's
your
say
diet. No?
Yeah, they do. They do. That's not a good thing, though. It's not a good use of a cookie. So if we expand that, like let's say I go to website B, and website B has advertising partnerships with Meta or Facebook. They have advertising partnerships with Microsoft. They have advertising partnerships with Google, etc. Right? Amazon is a big one in this. Now you get a cookie from all of those websites, and then I go to website C and I get a cookie from the same list of companies, and et cetera, and et cetera. And this follows me around the internet, right? And eventually I have an anonymous identifier based on this set of cookies, and I start to understand exactly what you do. And I've done this from the marketing angle of targeting people. And I could target the dude who lives in 5 cities, has 19 birthdays and a beard, and present him with ads.
I know a guy
right?
like that.
We can do that.
Yeah.
Now flip that, and Google has come up with this kind of ridiculous idea of saying, "You're right, guys. Y'all hate cookies. You're all blocking them with plugins and whatnot. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a feature to our browser that does the same thing just locally, and then every website you go to, we send in a header that says, Matt really likes gluten-free tacos. Like that's his thing.
Loves them. Fantastic.
Right? And so now we're saying, still relatively anonymized in the grand scheme of things until we find a way to exploit this, or threat actors do, which won't take long, by the way. Imagine every website you're going to, it's like, I can't tell you who this dude is, but he really likes gluten-free tacos and Jerby and Chef's.
It has 9 names,
right?
And signs in with all these different
It has 9 names in 5 cities, right? So that's what we're talking about. It's the shift in this tracking technology that personally I hate, but what do you guys think?
I also kind of hate it, but I could see some upside to it. I think it makes me feel worse that all of my, marketing data is just right there. I clear my cookies often, and I don't feel like I have that same control if it's just, running in the browser like that.
Yeah.
And that's another thing too, is what kind of exploits could lead to like collecting all that data out of the browser.
Google's never had a single vulnerability. Not at all.
No, never.
Oh my gosh.
Another thing too is
I don't know about that.
If you've got all that data in one place and you're this guy who lives in 5 cities or whatever and likes, gluten-free tacos, if you can collect all of that, it's very easy to correlate that back to maybe a real identity.
Yep. True story. 100% accurate. Especially if you are scattering that bad data multiple places that now only lines up to you, right? To that point. So,
yeah.
And I think in general, I talk about this a lot. We've again, took the value out of something we can do with tech before we thought about the security and impact. And I think the call to action and the one big takeaway here is cookies track you. The things you do on the internet are tracked. They are correlatable back to some Ray ID of some information that you're this person, so they can sell to that entity, right? And I think that as you think about that, find ways to limit cookie use. After GDPR, almost every website that does any business in Europe now has to say, you want all cookies? You want just tracking cookies, or just functional cookies or performance cookies? And you make that choice. And I personally make the choice today to do almost no cookies except for what is absolutely necessary for the function platform to work. And I have real questions and suspicion when it's in the browser level that's tracking this information and not in the browser vis-a-vis a cookie ordained by an entity that has asked for this cookie, that you could even see more and more collaboration to track more and more of this data as part of their commercial viability in a Google or in a Chrome type browser from that company. So I do agree. Chance, I think I'm with you, and there's some cool stuff about it because it lowers the ease of just stealing a physical file, a cookie that has been stored on the disk somewhere, to something that must be extracted from an application. But it does give me some serious concerns over the privacy implication of someone actively tracking that inside their browser, as opposed to a passive response to websites asking for that tracking. So that'd be my thoughts on it. Rob, what do you have on this matter? We've beaten this horse. I mean, the tongue's hanging out. It's already dead.
I think it's pretty beat. I agree with what Chance is just saying.
Yeah,
but
fair.
I mean.
Well, then let's bring this to something in your world. One of the things that I like to think about is, you talk about earlier, Rob, looking at our world the way the threat actors do, right? By the way, Dave Z says his date of birthday is Jan 1, 1901. Like, that a boy. Like, talk about a century, baby. Crushing it. But yeah, so you talk about this data and looking at it through an adversary's perspective or looking at it from the threat actor's perspective. What are some ways that people can actually do that themselves? What are some ways that people can look at what data is out there for them that they need to be aware of and make some changes on?
I mean, the easiest way is just to put your name in the Google search. Let's see what things pop up. See what data brokers are selling about your name, and then ultimately, clicking that three-dot menu and going through it and seeing if, hey, my information is in there. There's stuff that I don't want it to be searchable, and you can go that way.
Are there things that people have passwords and such that are easy to find that way too? Or how would I find out if passwords have been compromised, or if there are things about my accounts or products I use? How would I look at that?
If I was a threat actor, I'd go and check out some Tor websites and check out what breaches are available that's out there.
But if you're not, and if you're a human consumer,
there's a special website too, where if you put your email out, it'll say how many emails come out. Can I say that?
And it even has a response if you don't have it, and that response may or may not be a flag in our CTF.
And what I love about that is people know what the flag. The people that know what the flag is makes me feel better because their PAX8 email
weren't compromised.
Exactly.
What sucks is the ones that were compromised can't get that challenge. And you have to give them another email address to get that answer.
Or they can make a friend.
I think my number's only at 19.
There is a group that they can, commiserate.
Go join. That brings me to another point. I want to do a couple things real quick. So first, we've actually prepared a pretty cool video of just a few basic things you can do to protect yourselves. And I'd like to roll that. And then we'll get in and talk about our CTF. And then for all the people that work at PAX8 that are hanging around, I know why you're hanging around. And that's why I'm doing it at the end, not right now. So it's great to have you here. We'll be back in just a minute. Check.
2023 marks the 20th annual Cybersecurity Awareness Month. And this year, CISA is launching a new awareness program that will encourage 4 simple steps everyone can take to stay safe online. Simple actions we should all take, not only during Cybersecurity Awareness Month, but every day throughout the year. 4 things you can do to keep yourself cyber safe. Number 1, use strong passwords and a password manager. Strong passwords are critical to protecting data. Number 2, turn on multi-factor authentication, or MFA. You need more than a password to protect your online accounts, and enabling MFA makes you significantly less likely to get hacked. Number 3, recognize and report phishing. Phishing emails, texts, and calls are the number 1 way data gets compromised. Be cautious of unsolicited emails, texts, or calls asking for personal information. Number 4, update software. Ensuring your software is up to date is the best way to make sure you have the latest security patches and updates on your devices. Regularly check manually for updates if automatic updates are not available, and keep operating systems, antivirus software, web browsers, and applications up to date. Remember these tips and stay cyber safe.
That's awesome, right? I think reporting phishing is probably one of the ones that Robert probably is shaking his head the most about, right? Because that's a lot of where you live is like, I want to see that healthy, active reporting that shows, even if you're wrong, that shows you're out there looking for these phishing examples, that you're out there seeing where someone's attacking us. And interestingly enough, right, Rob, increasing the collective intelligence about what we know about our threat surface and what's being done against us, right? Is that a fair statement on why phishing reporting is so important?
You're taking this information seriously, and you're taking your awareness training seriously, and ultimately when something is like 90+% of the way that people get internal access to compromise, why the heck not? Like, I don't mind beating that horse.
Yeah, like keep reporting them. I'll tell you when you're wrong. It'll be fine. It's great.
Absolutely, absolutely.
You know, you came to me, Rob, about 4 months ago. Maybe it's been a little longer, and you told me your plan for
it was like
Cybersecurity
March.
Month. Was it March? Good God.
Yeah.
Tell me about what you pitched and what's come to reality. Let's talk about this a little bit, because you came to me with one cool idea, and I was like, bro, so much yes. Like, this has to happen. What did you do? Tell me about it.
Well, the beauty. Well, I come from an educational background, and ultimately, when you get a month that's like, dedicated to a specific thing, then that's called a unit, right? So you can like build up like people's understanding of cybersecurity in general, because hey, I got 31 days. That's a lot of time. Like I can put a lot of information on that, right? And so one of the things that I like found out was if you make something fun, people are going to learn more about a specific subject, and it'll hopefully be retained that much better, right? So like how are we gonna make it fun for people to learn about cybersecurity awareness outside of like a compliance training that they're forced to do? And I'm guilty of it. I brute force through some of those questions a lot, and until I get the right answer. And do I retain a lot of that? I don't know. Yeah, I have to, but I knew that before. Like what making this into a game was super cool, and then trying to get excitement from the get-go and getting buy-in from just folks in C-level and folks from other departments and people walking, like just engagement that we're seeing in teams through like, hey, like how can I help? Like this is where I am on this specific game. Like, someone commiserate with me. That's really cool. So what we are doing. So what I came to Nat with was like, okay, this is my idea. We have 4 weeks in October. Like we're gonna do themed weeks, and ultimately try and give some cyber, awareness information to folks in PAX 8 each week.
Yep.
And make it a game, get points on certain things, and ultimately get a sweet prize at the very end.
And can you show everybody what that sweet prize is? Because it's even sized enough for me. It's sized enough for my fat self. So what do you have?
It's
got
this,
the belt. Yeah,
right
it's
here.
so much.
It's a belt.
So if you're a PAX 8 employee,
like, this is the Rock pose, right? So it's a sweet belt.
I'm excited about it.
It's got like Cyber CTF champ on the bottom. It's got like some flags.
US
You're number
flags,
one.
number one. Sure.
What is this? And then there's like Cybersecurity Month 2023. So if this like ends up like being, I feel like it's being successful in the first week or whatever. I mean, we can possibly get another one next year or whatever. I don't know, but
first off, I'm already winning. Rob. Like I'm already got this on lock. Like I'm number one right now. I don't know, Chance, if you've seen that or not, but I do have.
Yeah, it's because you cheated.
I did cheat. I am a hacker. Like why would I not? But to be fair, let's bring this back to where everybody else can win. Let's go ahead without any more ado. We do have a CTF. It's amazing. Rob and team are crushing it with it. There's 170 so people playing it. Lots of people commiserating, to your point, Rob. But go ahead. Let's go ahead and expose this secret. Let's give it to them with 2 minutes left in the show. What's the flag they've been missing? Here it is. The flag for CTF.
And screenshot now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And possibly put it in the chat somewhere.
It's going to show up down in chat. Yeah. So Claire is going to pop it in chat. If you're a PAX 8er, I'm going to go ahead and pop over the leaderboard and let's just see real quick if anybody's watching in live. Going to get this scoreboard challenge. Here we are. Matt leads on top for now. Like that's awesome. I'm looking at you, TPI Mental or Bant or Omeleted Fromage. I'm really questioning about the omelette du fromage. I believe that's just a cheese omelet, but it sounds really bad, at least from a colloquialism perspective. But yeah, so that's really it, y'all. And I think the point is that you made really well, Rob. when you find yourself in a month that's dedicated, it's a unit. And that unit is meant to be made up with lessons that we can learn, ways we can all be better, and ways we can improve and raise our cybersecurity posture and hygiene. And I think that we're all reeling from the fact that, just like all humans, we take technology first for how much it improves our lives and then figure out how to secure it and protect it. And so a lot of people were just now starting to actually think about, maybe I shouldn't answer all those quizzes on Facebook. Maybe those things are actually Matt trying to trick me so he can know what my favorite food was, so he can reset my password. And so we're starting to do that. And Rob, I was so excited that you asked us to be part of it. You asked Dom and I to come in, and we're going to do 4 shows. Each week we're going to have a show targeted on some form of cybersecurity around internal operations with PAX8, and almost trying to expose those humans that are there protecting you on a day-to-day basis. And I'll end with this. If you are in a company, if you work somewhere where you have cybersecurity teams, or you have an MSP that does your cybersecurity, this is the month to thank them. This is the month to say, I get what you're doing. I don't want to learn all this stuff. It's a pain in the ass. It's too technical. And that's why I need to trust you. And that's why when Rob or Chance comes to me and says, Matt, I need your attention, I drop everything, because they are the ones protecting me. And I appreciate y'all. And I'll start by saying thank you for everything y'all do. And I'll spend each of the next 3 weeks making sure we spend time thanking our teams that protect us every day. So God bless, and thank you for all you do. If there's anything you want to close out with, say it now or forever hold your peace, and then we'll see y'all next week.
I just want to shout out Rob for Cybersecurity Month. He's done basically all the work, and it's awesome. It's so great.
Yeah, thanks, I'm going to keep that belt, though, bro. That's
Our
mine.
team is dope. It's so fun just to be part of this team. So find yourself a cool security team. That's the key to it all.
True story. Well, Don, let's close us out, bud. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for everything.
Thank y'all
you
so
do
much
for PAX8. That is our show for the week. I forgot some introductory housekeeping that I better catch up with now, or I'm going to get in trouble. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. You guys did a lot of commenting today. We really appreciate that.
It was great.
PAX8 Beyond registration is still open, and last I checked, it is officially Q4 early next year. Pricing goes up for Beyond, so if you're at all interested, grab your ticket now. We'll see you next week. We're going to have more extremely talented humans from PAX8's cybersecurity team on with us, and have a great weekend.